The biggest update of the year is here. Tonight, we're diving into a subject you simply cannot afford to ignore. The Iraqi Dinar and the Vietnamese Dong are no longer quiet rumors passed around in small investor circles. What we're seeing right now is historic, moving at a speed most never thought possible. For years, skeptics laughed, doubted, and mocked the idea of a currency revaluation or global reset. They dismissed it as fantasy, nothing but internet speculation. Yet here we are in 2025, with governments and institutions speaking openly about mechanisms, contract rates, and floating exchange systems. Stay tuned until the end, because what I'm about to reveal could reshape the way you view the dinar, the dong, and the financial future standing right in front of us. Think back only a few years ago. If someone claimed Iraq and Vietnam were preparing to float their currencies, most people would have laughed them out of the room. Iraq was portrayed as unstable, fractured, and far too dependent on oil revenues to manage a strong currency. Vietnam was labeled a rising manufacturing hub, but chained to an undervalued system designed only to boost exports. But here we are in 2025, with both nations piecing together a clear and public path toward a major financial shift. The real question has changed. It's no longer if, but how soon. That shift in language is enormous. Because once policymakers, central banks, and global leaders start referencing mechanisms and currency baskets, it's a sign the infrastructure is already being built, not just imagined. The foundation is in place. The tools are ready. The horizon is closer than ever. Let's start with Vietnam. For decades, the Vietnamese Dong has been one of the most deliberately suppressed currencies on earth. The government kept its value low to supercharge exports, giving Vietnam a competitive edge in global trade with Europe and the United States. But that same suppression built distortions. Now Vietnamese officials are openly acknowledging discussions about a floating mechanism, a massive break from years of rigid controls. Why is this important? Because when a suppressed currency floats, it naturally climbs toward its true market value. Analysts widely agree that Vietnam's real value is much higher than its current peg. Imagine what this means for global holders of Dong. Instead of decades of waiting, a float could spark rapid adjustments, much like Kuwait's rebound after its war-driven devaluation. This is no longer rumor. It's an official conversation. Now let's turn to Iraq, where the developments are just as groundbreaking. For years, talk of the dinar revolved around oil production and price fluctuations. But what's being revealed is that Iraq has secured a contract rate arrangement, one not tied solely to crude oil prices. Think about that for a second. For decades, the assumption was simple. As oil demand rose, the dinar would rise with it. That was powerful enough, given Iraq's massive reserves. But what's surfacing now is even more secure. A guaranteed rate negotiated with major powers, placing a safety floor under the currency. No matter what oil does, the dinar will not collapse. This isn't just insurance, it's leverage. It ensures stability both for Iraq and for anyone holding dinar. Why would such a mechanism even be necessary? The answer is confidence. Iraq needed to restore credibility with international partners, while investors demanded protection against volatility. By locking in a floor value, Iraq signals its currency won't be at the mercy of market swings. In turn, global players gain the assurance they need to commit capital. For everyday holders of dinar, this is game-changing. It opens the possibility of exchanging not just at the market rate, but also through redemption paths tied to the contract rate. After years of uncertainty, delays, and dashed hopes, holders may now be sitting on a currency with built-in security. This fundamentally changes the investment picture. The conversation is no longer tied to oil barrels or political calm. The agreements themselves are already anchoring the dinar. So why are Iraq and Vietnam pushing forward now? Why in 2025 is this transparency finally happening? The answer lies in timing. A decade ago, neither country was ready. Iraq's government was fractured, corruption rampant, and banking infrastructure weak. Vietnam, though thriving, was still overly dependent on currency suppression to drive exports. But fast forward to today, Iraq's political system has stabilized, reserves are stronger, oil revenues are steady, and international oversight has reformed its banking sector. Vietnam has risen into a global manufacturing powerhouse, cementing trade deals with the West and expanding its influence. Both nations have reached a stage where suppression is no longer sustainable without harming their economies. That's why today the float and revaluation are public, not whispered, and the ripple effect potentially massive. If Iraq revalues and Vietnam floats, other undervalued currencies could quickly follow. It could trigger a chain reaction across Asia and the Middle East, correcting long-held imbalances in trade and currency value. We're talking about a domino effect that shifts the global order in ways we haven't seen in decades. Many countries are frustrated with the US dollar's dominance in global trade. De-dollarization is accelerating, and sovereign nations are seeking independence. A revalued dinar and floating dong open the door for baskets of currencies to take precedence over the dollar in bilateral trade. This is more than finance. It's geopolitical transformation happening in plain sight. Skeptics will still ask, why believe it now after years of failed rumors? It's a fair question. For years, speculation circled with no results. But what makes today different is transparency. Vietnamese officials are publicly discussing floating systems. Iraqi leaders are referencing baskets of currencies on record. These are not leaks or rumors, they are verifiable acknowledgements. And when central banks and governments go on record, the silent stage is over. It signals implementation is underway. Transparency itself is the biggest signal. The quiet has turned into official statements, global meetings, and recorded policies. That's the proof we've all been waiting for. What does this mean for ordinary holders of dinar and dong? It means strategy is critical. You cannot just sit back and hope. without a plan. If Iraq's contract rate is rolled out, there may be specific steps required: documentation, appointments, even designated redemption centers. For Vietnam, a float looks very different. Instead of a one-time overnight jump, the dong may rise gradually. Timing becomes key. Do you exchange early for modest gains or hold as it climbs higher? These are real-world decisions that require preparation. Consider Kuwait's experience. After the Gulf War, its currency collapsed under sanctions and instability. Few believed it would ever recover. But when conditions stabilized, the Kuwaiti dinar surged back, creating sudden wealth. Today, Iraq and Vietnam appear to be following parallel paths. Iraq's dinar is backed by contract guarantees. Vietnam's dong could strengthen through a managed float. Different methods, same outcome, higher valuations. Kuwait's recovery proves this is not fiction. It has happened before, and the conditions today are arguably stronger, with modern banking, trade agreements, and oversight providing a smoother transition. Another key factor here is the role of global banks. For years, institutions like HSBC, Wells Fargo, and Chase have quietly built infrastructure for large